500 more sets.
10 forgotten tech giants that ruled before the internet era. The tech industry is one place where things never stay the same. Before the tech giants of today, there were other companies who ruled over Silicon Valley and carved the path for many more to come. These companies spanned a variety of industries, from business computing to photography and entertainment. Some of them became household names. Yet, as the consumer habits changed, many of these giants struggled to innovate and simply faded into oblivion. In this video, we will take a look at 10 of these tech giants that once ruled the industry and see how they eventually fell. Number 1. RadioShack. Let's start with RadioShack. The company was founded in 1921 in Boston by the brothers Theodore and Milton Deutschman. In the early days, this company specialized in making ham radio equipment and parts for radio enthusiasts. The name of the company, RadioShack, refers to the small wooden structures that housed radios on ships. In the 1940s and 50s, as consumer electronics became more mainstream, RadioShack expanded their business into selling hi-fi audio gear, vacuum tubes, and other new tech. Then in the 60s, they were acquired by the Tandy Corporation. Under their new leadership, they pivoted from radio gear into a much wider range of electronics. One of their most interesting products was the TRS-80 computer that they launched in 1977.
RadioShack used space-age technology to create a compact computer for home and business, the TRS-80 microcomputer system.
It was a full-fledged computer just like the ones from IBM, but eventually competition in the PC space outshadowed it. RadioShack expanded to more than 7,000 locations across the US, and by the 80s and 90s, they were at the peak of the consumer electronics business. However, later in the 2000s, RadioShack started struggling due to the e-commerce boom and the rise of Amazon, Newegg, and other retailers. Big box competition from places like Best Buy and Walmart and Target also made things worse for RadioShack. RadioShack struggled to adapt and eventually fell out of favor. They did some rebranding in 2013, but the company simply could not escape the downward spiral. The company still exists as an online retailer under the leadership of Retail E-commerce Ventures, REV, but it has nowhere near the same popularity as it did back in the late 1900s. Number 2. Polaroid. Before smartphones put high-quality cameras in our pockets, instant photography was king and Polaroid was rightly on the throne. Polaroid was founded in 1937 by Edwin Land, who initially produced polarizing lenses, hence the similarity of the brand name with it. Land's company launched the first instant camera back in 1948, which allowed users to develop photos within a minute. Polaroid was at the zenith of the instant photos business and had become a cultural icon. Then, in the 90s, as the digital age started to take over, the company failed to adapt as it continued to rely on film sales instead of embracing digital tech. Things got so worse that in 2001 they filed for bankruptcy and most of their assets were sold off. The brand changed hands multiple times with attempts to revive it. In 2008, Polaroid stopped making instant film entirely. Today, Polaroid exists as a niche brand, producing instant cameras and digital hybrids. It is no longer the giant it once was, but the company has found a second life through vintage appeal and collector interest. 3. Compaq. One of the most powerful names in computing, Compaq was a leader in the PC market during the 1980s and 90s. This company was founded in 1982 by a group of former Texas Instruments engineers and quickly became a major player in the computer market. Their main breakthrough came from launching an IBM-compatible computer, which allowed users to run IBM software on non-IBM hardware. By the 90s, they were one of the best-selling computer manufacturers, but in the early 2000s, their sales began to decline. This was the time when Dell started to take over, and thanks to their superior D2C model, which undercut Compaq's prices, Compaq lost much of the market share. Some struggles in their internal management made things worse, and they did not have a clear strategy on how to proceed further. In 2022, they were acquired by HP for $25 billion, which is one of the largest tech mergers in the history of computing. HP continued to use Compaq's name for some of its products, but they phased it out completely in the 2010s. Compaq simply does not exist today. Number 4. Palm. Our next company on the list is Palm. This was a company that made the amazing precursors to modern smartphones. At that time, these devices were known as Personal Digital Assistants, or PDAs in short. The Palm Pilot was an early PDA that was launched in the 90s and had multiple computer-like abilities. This device let the users take notes, manage contacts, and even send emails. In the early 2000s, the Palm Trio was launched, which was one of the first real smartphones to be directly competing with BlackBerry.
The Trio 750 smartphone, and this is from the company that virtually invented this sort of device.
However, Palm struggled with software innovation. When Apple introduced the iPhone in 2007, Palm simply couldn't keep up. An attempted comeback with the Palm Pre and WebOS failed, and in 2010, HP acquired Palm, marking the end of an era. By 2011, Palm was effectively dead, and their WebOS software was eventually sold to LG. Number 5. Kodak. Much like Polaroid, Kodak dominated photography for most of the 20th century. Its name was synonymous with film cameras, and they were pioneering everything from color film to disposable cameras. It's very ironic that Kodak couldn't survive the digital revolution, as they were the ones who invented the first digital camera in 1975. They feared that this product would ultimately hurt their existing film business, so they failed to follow the correct path. By the 2000s, digital cameras replaced film, and Kodak's core business collapsed. Brands like Sony, Canon, and Nikon completely took over the photography industry. After filing bankruptcy in 2012, Kodak restructured into a smaller company focused on imaging technology and commercial printing. They still exist today, but their downfall serves as a classic example of the adapt or die mantra. 6. Xerox. Now, let's talk about Xerox. Some of you might have actually heard of this name in the context of photocopying. Just like Polaroid was synonymous with the camera films, Xerox was with copiers. However, they were not limited to just photocopiers. Xerox manufactured a wide range of office technology, including fax machines and even graphic user interfaces, GUIs, that later inspired Apple and Microsoft. They even made their own computer in the 1970s, the Xerox Alto. This machine introduced many features of modern computers, like the mouse and graphical interface. But instead of commercializing these innovations, Xerox focused on its copier business. As personal computing took off in the 80s and 90s, Xerox fell behind because they didn't focus enough on the newer computer tech. Though Xerox still exists today and sells multifunctional printers, it's only a fraction of what it once was. Number 7. Blockbuster. Blockbuster was founded in 1985 by David Cook and quickly became the dominant video rental chain in both the US and the rest of the world. The company had grown quite rapidly, expanding to thousands of locations by the 90s. Their success was driven by their vast inventory of VHS tapes and DVDs, along with a very convenient rental model. At its peak, it had over 9,000 locations worldwide, generating billions in revenue. But the rise of Netflix and online streaming made its business model obsolete. Blockbuster famously declined an offer to buy Netflix for $50 million in 2000. By the late 2000s, it was struggling to compete and filed for bankruptcy in 2010. Today, only one Blockbuster store remains in Bend, Oregon. It is quite the nostalgic relic of a bygone era. 8. BlackBerry. Before iPhones and Androids, BlackBerry was the ultimate smartphone brand, especially for business professionals. The brand was launched back in 1984 by the name Research in Motion, RAM. With its signature physical keyboard and secure messaging services, BlackBerry dominated the early 2000s. It was the phone of choice for corporate America and even world leaders.
BlackBerry once reigned as king of the smartphone, selling more than 50 million units at its peak in 2011.
But by the late 2000s, it failed to adapt to touchscreens and app-based ecosystems. The iPhone and Android revolution left BlackBerry behind. They made some attempts to design Android phones, which sold decent amounts, but it wasn't enough to restore the company to its former glory. After these failed attempts, BlackBerry exited the phone market completely by 2022. 9. Gateway. If you have ever seen one of those cow-spotted desktops, know that it was a Gateway PC. Gateway was one of the biggest brands of the 90s, and they grew large in a relatively small amount of time. Gateway was founded in 1985, and it quickly became popular for selling affordable computers directly to consumers. Its marketing was quirky, and its computer-friendly approach made it a household name. However, Dell's dominance in online sales and HP's aggressive pricing squeezed Gateway out. It was acquired by Acer in 2007 for $710 million. and since then, the brand quietly faded away. Number 10. Netscape. Netscape Communications was founded in 1994 by Mark Andreessen and Jim Clark. This company built the Netscape Navigator, which was the world's first widely popular web browser.
On pretty much every consumer operating system, and if you had access to the internet in the mid-90s, it's very likely that this program, this web browser,
It introduced millions of people to the internet long before Chrome, Firefox, or even Internet Explorer existed. In the mid-90s, Netscape absolutely dominated the web browser market. But when Microsoft bundled Internet Explorer with Windows for free, Netscape's market share plummeted. In 1998, Netscape was acquired by AOL, and by the early 2000s it was no longer relevant. However, its legacy lives on as Mozilla Foxfire was developed by former Netscape engineers, and Firefox continues to be a popular choice among users. And with that, we conclude our list of 10 forgotten giants that once ruled the tech scene. Which one of these companies do you remember? Or do you have a favorite that we didn't include? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into American tech history. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.